Are moral victories a thing?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Charlie Tuesday to all who celebrate. We are joined by Auburn Message Board legend Charlie5. Later in the show, we'll be joined by Brian Smith to talk Cruton. Big weekend for Cruton on the Plains. But Charlie5 informs me that moral victories are a thing.
Absolutely.
I can't believe you believe this.
Absolutely. I've been listening to you guys for like 3 days, just stumbling over yourself, trying not to like get excited or it's not. There's no such thing as moral victories. There's absolutely such things as moral victories. In year one, in game 5 against the number 1 team in the country, to take them to the wire and then to be able to walk into that recruiting facility when everybody's going nuts because they can see the vision and they can see the momentum that you've built to, that is absolutely a moral victory. Now, if this happens in year 3, then you got issues, and you may need to change it to morale victory. I don't know if moral victory is necessarily the right term, but absolutely, they're a great thing, and those are things you got to look at and you got to build off of. So I don't have any problem. I don't have to backtrack and like walk over myself to not act like I'm happy about how the game played out. Like, I mean, I don't even really understand that. Like, of course they exist. And I think we had a big one on Saturday.
I do wonder if it's semantics at this point, because I've kind of broken it down to there's 2 different types of conversations we need to have. Sure. Auburn should have won the game on Saturday based on the situation the defense put the offense in. But also there's a conversation about bigger picture, like Auburn's heading in the right direction. So like, is that the same thing? I don't know. Like, does that make it a moral victory?
Are you trying to, let me ask you this. Were we trying to win the game, or did you feel like we were just trying to not look bad or trying to cover? I felt like we were trying to win the game. And if you're just trying to not get beat too bad, to me, that's what you call a moral. That's the frowned upon, view of like a moral victory. But like to go out there and battle and stand toe to toe in year 1 with the least talented roster Hugh Freeze is going to have at Auburn, to go toe to toe like they did with no vertical passing game whatsoever, and a severely injured and undermanned defense, and to be able to hang in there. I mean, I was bugging, man. That's the most I think I've
Sounds
ever
like you still are.
That's the most I've bugged in a loss in a very, very long time.
What's the best like 2013 LSU?
Yeah, I mean,
best loss.
That could be. Look, that could sort of be like one of those. Not like obviously maybe not go on a run and go to the playoff, but there could be something where everybody's like, okay, we can play. We can make plays. All we got to do is figure out a little bit here and a little bit there. You're two or three plays away from winning that game. You're one catch away from extending a drive to at least, cut off more time off the clock. Like you're 2 catches away from maybe winning the game. You're an interception away, a dropped interception away from possibly winning the game. Like, man, that's got to fire these guys up and say, hey, man, I think we might be on the right track. So
I think they are on the right track, and we'll talk about the recruiting aspect of it later in the show. But you're certainly right as far as everybody. I think it's another sign of everybody being on the same page, right? I think that's something that's been encouraging. But there's just aspects of this offense that have to get fixed, Charlie5. I mean, it's bad, and the fact that they were able to do that without any threat of a passing game is kind of wild.
Yeah.
But I mean, even when Peyton Thorne has a good throw, it's like the receivers don't catch it or they don't make a play. I mean, it's just every aspect of it needs to get better.
Yeah, it's I'm starting to think, and maybe we'll talk about, some of the biggest surprises, but like, it's just not very good. It's just not very good. I don't know if it's scheme, if it's talent, if it's execution. Could it be a little bit of all three?
I think it has to be.
It's got to be
that bad. It has to be more than one thing.
I will say that it felt like this is the most it's felt like it was a plays made sense as far as like sequencing up into. I mean, there's obviously a few times you can always go back and second guess,
Sure.
what won, the substitutions and blah blah blah. But I don't know that he was calling plays, but I know for the first time I saw Hugh with a play sheet on the sideline, and I know that he said specifically he lost time recruiting this week because he was working so hard with the offense. So is that something you build off of in the off week? We'll have to see. And does that make you get better? It's just there is it's weird how bad both, like, from the quarterback play and the receiver play, like, equally how bad it is. So
at what point is this, like, is Philip Montgomery doing a bad job? Is Hugh Freeze doing a bad job on the offense? Is this a position coach thing? Like, is Marcus Davis underachieving as a receivers coach? Like, or is it just a lack of time together thing? Like, where does blame fall, Charlie5?
So that's a great question.
It's impossible for us to really know, but we can speculate.
Sure. I've always maintained that a wide receiver coach is a recruiter first and foremost. I don't necessarily so when people say Marcus Davis, like,
I agree. I'm with you.
You either are talented or you're not at catching a football. Like, you don't, like, teach somebody how to catch better. Now, can he help them drill them on running the routes correctly and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure, releases off the line of scrimmage, or what to look for in a defense if it's an option route. Yeah, that's his job. Sure,
but also that's the offensive coordinator's job. And you run the routes the way that the offensive coordinator expects you to run the route, like, because that's the way his play is drawn up to be worked. So the wide receiver coach is sort of like the messenger of that, I guess. So
sure,
I guess I think it's got to be. I think it's got to be a combination of just like talent and lack thereof, and then the scheme not mixing well with that talent. And so you got to go super, super basic. And now you just sort of handicapped yourself to where your routes can't really be super elaborate. It's got to be a lot of quick stuff like we saw and one read type stuff. And that's tough at this level of football. It's really tough.
I get it. All right, let's talk about some of the biggest surprises that we've seen so far this season. I got a feeling we've already touched on a few of those. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Charlie5, can you imagine buying tickets to something not on Game Time? The Game Time app, it's free. There's no reason not to do it.
It makes me mad to think that people don't, it's physically ill.
I mean, they're wasting so much time. They're wasting so much money. They're wasting so much potential happiness by not using the Game Time app to buy your last minute tickets. It doesn't make any sense. I watched somebody else buy a ticket another way once, and they cried. I
don't doubt it.
And then I watched them the next day buy the same tickets on Game Time. They cried again, but this time it was happiness. It wasn't sadness. So be sure to check out Game Time. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Can you imagine paying full price for tickets? Can you imagine that? Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. They're asking me to spell it out. I'm not going to. For $20 off, download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Charlie5, can you imagine buying Auburn gear not at Alumni Hall?
Again, it makes me mad to think it makes me mad to think that you wouldn't. It's irresponsible. The
best selection of Auburn swag. It's officially licensed merchandise. You don't have to worry about that orange being a little bit off. We've all seen those other shirts. We all know that you're fake. Go to Alumni Hall. You're like a real Auburn fan. You're watching a daily Auburn show. Go to Alumni Hall and buy your Auburn swag. Got the best stuff. It doesn't matter if you want jerseys or collared shirts or pet clothing, whatever it may be. Charlie5's a big pet guy. He buys all the pet clothing for all these dogs that he doesn't have. But head over to alumnihall.com or go to their physical stores in Auburn, Opelika, and Huntsville. And the one in Opelika is my personal favorite. It's in Tigertown. The one in Auburn's off of College Street, just off of campus. And then Huntsville, no clue. Never been to Huntsville. That's not true. I've never been to the Alumni Hall in Huntsville, but I'm sure it's
right below the Big Rocket.
Or just head over to alumnihall.com. All right, Charlie5, the biggest surprise for me so far this season is the poor passing game and the poor, I guess, just awareness of what's happening in front of them by Peyton Thorne so far this year. Yeah. And we've already kind of talked about this, so we won't spend a ton of time on it, but I just didn't really see this as an option because I thought the offense would be so catered to him and catered to a quarterback like every other Hugh Freeze offense has been. And this isn't that until really like this past week. And I think if that wasn't against Georgia, it would have looked a little bit better, but still, like, we had a chance to win. You couldn't grab it. So that to me has been the biggest surprise. And to be frank, it's not close.
I got to say my biggest surprise is I feel like all of the portal wide receivers were, as of right now, complete misses. I haven't seen anything. Mardner's been hurt. He got in the game. He ran a go route. And he was supposed to look back for a back shoulder fade. He's
still running. He's still running right now to this day.
Shorter. I don't know if it's injuries or whatever. He cannot get open.
That's a big one. I mean, the eye test for him is just like,
and he was supposed to be like your big play guy, and then hooks, maybe there should have been. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go too negative, but he was the big play highlight reel scrimmage guy, and then he just doesn't seem to be able to make the big play when he's given the opportunities. I wonder if you go back in time, does Hugh push harder for like a Jamari Thrash, who from Georgia State, who visited pretty quickly after he entered the portal? Do you push harder for do you go all in for a Keon Coleman? I think you learned a lot. I think you have to learn a lot from this, and be able, because clearly you have to have a level of wide receiver in this league to be able to execute this offense. And you got to be able to have dudes that can just go up and you just put it in the area and they can go up and get it and make plays. And that just frees up everybody. And am I missing anybody? Is there somebody that I'm missing on Rivaldo's a tight end, and he's been good at times when we've been able to get him the ball. But I can't think of like an addition to the team when we honestly thought we flipped that room. Like that could have become one of our strongest rooms, and it's just not. It's still. You said this before, right? Like the portal stuff came about. You said in college football, I don't remember if you said it in person or if you said it on a show. In college football, it's quarterbacks and receivers, and Auburn has no receivers right now. And I can't remember if that was before we added the portal, or not, but it's true. It's true. It's quarterbacks and wide receivers, and we just don't seem to have that guy. We don't have that guy. I don't think we have a guy that is just a go-to guy at receiver, like period.
Yeah. Here I am thinking our lunch conversations actually stayed between us, but that's okay. That's okay, yeah. Charlie5. Sorry. No, something that's been interesting to me. I did this at auburndaily.com yesterday. I looked at who's played the most, top 10 in snap counts on offense and defense. Shane Hooks is 8th on offense. So, I mean, he's pretty much just behind the offensive line, Peyton Thorne, and Rivaldo Fairweather. So I thought that was interesting because it just doesn't feel like he's playing that much, but he's playing more than any other skill position.
He doesn't pop, like nothing happens. Unfortunately, I hate it, but nothing happens when he's out there.
Yeah.
So it just is what it is.
Surprised somebody, is that the room we see the most shakeup at? Maybe over the bye week? You've got to try something else. You have to.
I don't, but the thing is, like, well, who do you go to?
I think Nick Marner could be a winner of the bye week.
Maybe he could be because he's been unhealthy. So maybe he
got injured at like the worst time possible.
Yeah, he did. He got banged up like whenever you had to start trying to win a position. And
what about like a Caleb Burton?
I think
Coy Moore.
I've heard Burton could possibly be getting like a red shirt maybe from like just nagging little injuries and stuff like that. So I don't know. Coy Moore, maybe Coy Moore's a guy you could go to. He's had some experience, but again, it's kind of like when people are like, "Oh, Puckett can't cover Bowers. What are we gonna do, Puckett?" But nobody's behind him, guys. There's nobody back. There's nobody behind him. So like, where do you go to at the wide receiver room? Like you take. It's not like we got like a hidden weapon that's just like waiting to be unleashed at wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like there's just not much there. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is.
I'm like irrationally excited to start 2 freshman receivers next year.
Oh, maybe 3.
Just trot out what's Simmons, Kane, and Thompson.
Or if you add a Nikar that was here over the weekend, who could be, if he was 6'2", he'd be the number 1 player in the class. I think he's the best. He's probably.
Let's put Cam Coleman there too. Let's just go 5 wide.
Let's just go 5 wide. If you can somehow get Cam Coleman. He wouldn't. I don't even think he came for this game. He just does not like Auburn. I don't know why. But like you add a Nikar, you got Bryce Kane. And then Perry Thompson, and maybe add a JUCO guy. Like you may have a whole new wide receiving crew.
You're gonna have to get somebody through the portal. You're gonna have to get pass catchers through the portal still. You can't just trot out freshmen. But it's like at least then there's something to point at. But it's just like you look at Shane Hooks and Jair Shorter and Nick Marner, which Marner I'm willing to give more of a pass to because of the injury situation. But it's like these guys have been playing football for a long time. And it's just not there. This is not there. All right, we're about to talk Cruton with Brian Smith. Charlie5, in the meantime, you're coming back Thursday, right?
Yep.
You and Jake Crane. Agreed to a debate on Twitter when we were all like really emotionally upset after the game. So I'm sure this is going to turn out great. We'll see.
I'm just a fan. He's the coach. I'm just a fan. So I'm just nobody.
The first debate in the history of Locked On Auburn. So we'll see how that goes. I'll see you then, buddy. That sound good?
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right. In the meantime, can you imagine wearing shorts that aren't bird dogs?
Nope.
I can't either.
If your shorts don't have a liner in them, I don't want them. How about that?
And you're probably soaking wet and sweaty and gross.
Oh, swamp. You know what?
Bird dogs are great. They keep you cool. I'm wearing bird dogs right now. I've been wearing them to the gym. I did leg day earlier. I still feel fresh. I am in a shower after this. But bird dogs, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. I'm going out of town this weekend. All I'm packing is bird dogs because that's all I need. You need to get you some bird dogs. All you have to do is go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege at checkout. All one word, no spaces, for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Let's talk Cruton. And of course, we're joined by Locked On Recruiting Insider Brian Smith. Recruiting coverage across Locked On Podcast Network brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Be sure to head over to linkedinjobs.com. Use promo code LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Ton of visitors in attendance at the Deep South's oldest rivalry over the weekend, Brian, but one that's getting a lot of buzz, a lot of tension. Jeremiah Beeman, the defensive lineman, plays at Parker, Birmingham kid, committed to Alabama. But boy, Auburn is making the full court press for this kid and just talking to folks close to the situation. It sounds like, Brian, he's really, really considering it.
Well, for Auburn's sake, that would be very good news because he's a kid that could come in and play right away.
Yeah.
He's an over 250 kid that plays like somebody that's 230. He can play in space. He can come off the edge. He could be a 3-tech, and he's a pass rusher. Ward only knows you can never have enough of those in the Southeastern Conference. And look, Auburn, you got to give them credit. They played a heck of a game. If he wasn't impressed with that, I'm not sure Auburn would be the place for him then, but I mean, they should have won the game, to be honest. And
I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm sure that was rough there at the end for you, but
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and yeah.
You want to talk about it? You want to talk about Brock Bowers some? Like,
holy cow.
oh,
if you'd had 13 on the field, I'm not sure it would have mattered. Just that guy's unbelievable, man. I think he's the best pure football player in the country. But anyway,
I'm with you.
That's the kind of guy that if you're going to get back into the Alabama-Georgia conversation, the LSU A&M conversation, you have to get. And they already flipped a certain wide receiver we've discussed many times on this show. Hey, Alabama's flipping something. It's not, I mean, they're still really good, don't get me wrong, but there's not the same pizzazz with them. Would this have happened 4 years ago? No.
Yeah. So you being a recruiting guy, when you see what Auburn put together, right? I think with Hugh Freeze, it's clear nothing that he does, it's not a coincidence. And he talked about how big this Auburn, Georgia weekend was for recruits coming in, but it was a who's who, Brian. Cam Newton was there, Frank Thomas, Charles Barkley, Suni Lee. I mean, every Auburn celebrity was on campus and in that game, and they were taking pictures with all the recruits. I mean, it was a big, big deal. That's got to mean something, right? That's got to help move the needle to some extent. I mean, all these kids seem like they had a great time.
This is how you have a movement at a school. This is how you get back on the right track. It's interesting that like even Barkley was there. He's always been an Auburn fan beyond to being somebody that played basketball there. He really openly likes it. Him being around, and I know Cam really likes the school, etc. That's great. I mean, Cam, I've been around him several times. Humongous personality. It's hard not to enjoy being around him.
Yeah.
This should help them get kind of like over the hump. Maybe they end up with a top 10 class, maybe not, but this is where you got to get a few extra commitments. And again, Beeman's the creme de la creme, and I'm sure it would break your heart to see Alabama lose a recruit. I know you, Zach. That would just kill you.
I know it. I was really heartbroken when Perry Thompson left them to come to Auburn. It'd be devastating for another one to come. But no, joking aside. Yeah, I mean, Jeremiah Beeman would be huge, right? And it kind of just shows, once again, Hugh Freeze isn't afraid to go after these guys that are committed elsewhere.
If you don't, you won't last at Auburn anyway. That's the one thing they've missed is the big-time recruits at D-line, corner, etc. The kid that came in this past year, they flipped him. Yep. That's a kid that came in. He's how many games he started or what? I mean, basically a starter, co-starter anyway.
Right.
They're getting the right guys. And I got to give, I didn't think it would be this quick. They would start to turn it around. I thought this would be a 3-year process because the roster wasn't exactly in the greatest of shape. So it's amazing.
It wasn't. Yeah. So Jeremiah Beeman, we've talked about this before, on threes, recruiting prediction machine. You know, I don't fully know how all of this works, but it was Alabama by a lot because he was committed there. Now Alabama's at 30%, and Auburn's right behind him at 26.8%. So that number's getting closer and closer. So I'll take it. I'll take it. Staying on the defensive line, LJ McCray, who's a guy that we've talked about before, but TJ Lindsey was tweeting at him over the course of the weekend. You actually sent it to me. Said, "Come home, twin," and then tagged LJ McCray in that. And TJ Lindsey, and we'll talk about him in a second. That's a guy that's certainly trending up, it seems like. But LJ McCray, your neck of the woods, Brian, what are you hearing about him?
Well, he's got one more visit official left, and that's Florida State this upcoming weekend. But Auburn is the wild card in his recruitment. 6'6", 275. At the high school level, he's playing outside linebacker, which is very scary. There are parents in the stands that have to witness their child being engulfed. But it is what it is. He's going to end up at Auburn, Georgia, Florida State, or Miami. It's about as who's who as it can get in the Deep South. So I don't know where he's going to go, but Lindsey saying that is a good sign. I know that they're in the mix. LJ told me to my face that he wanted to visit Auburn. We'll see. He's going to be a signing day kid, though, but Auburn is definitely in the mix. And like nobody thought they were going to get TJ Lindsey either. Who's he committed to, Zach? It would be the Auburn.
He's committed to Auburn. Yeah, he's committed to Auburn. And of course, they were on campus for this Auburn Georgia game this past weekend. And LJ, talking to reporters after the game, said the game was amazing. Had a great time. I mean, a common theme here, but it does seem like there's more energy around all the kids that showed up this weekend than there typically is. So we'll certainly see what happens. But TJ Lindsey, man, I mean, this is a guy that was at Arkansas. Now he's at IMG. And so I think he's starting to get a little more attention, rightfully so. You predicted this, Brian, when he committed to Auburn. You said, watch this kid. And now there are some Auburn recruiting folks that are saying, hey, this may be the best kid in the class when it's all said and done.
He had advanced technique. The only problem TJ had was he lived in the middle of the woods. He was out in Arkansas somewhere.
Yeah.
Now he's at IMG where everybody can see him. I actually spoke to somebody at IMG today, and they've got players there all over the place. So there's always a scout coming through, and they're like, oh, look at that. I'd never seen him live. Nobody. I mean, he lived in Arkansas.
Right.
He is a really good football player. He had offers from all over the country. Arkansas kids don't get a lot of outside attention, but TJ Lindsey did. That was the first sign. Then I saw him at IMG Live, and I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So he's
passed the eye
gonna
test.
play early. Oh,
yeah.
Great kid too. Great kid.
Sure. No, you sent me your interview with him. Very, very impressive young man. No question about it. So it's a bye week for Auburn. What do you expect Hugh Freeze to do this weekend from a recruiting standpoint?
Be as many places as he can all at the same time.
Yeah.
Ubiquitous. It's go see some commits. There will be some under the radar sneaking around recruiting, trying to find some kids to flip. That's just the way the industry works, especially in the SEC. But you'll see them, especially I think in the state of Alabama, the entire staff. I forget what the number is right now, Zach, that they have committed from the state of Alabama, but it's pretty high. And I think that's a focal point because, to be really honest, Bama has kind of turned its back on the in-state. They just go after the highest ranked kids. And it's obviously worked. But this is a chance for Auburn to make some inroads, even in like Birmingham, Huntsville, areas that it's more difficult for them to recruit. So it's very interesting what they're going to do this week. Don't be surprised to see Auburn up in the Atlanta area quite a bit too.
Yeah, I believe it's 10 of their 18 commits right now, in-state kids. So
that's good for Auburn. They should always have about 10 kids, to be honest. It's Auburn for crying out loud.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that really hasn't been the case as of late. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Brian, thank you so much for your time, as always. And in the meantime, tell people how they can check out everything you've got going on.
At FB Scout _Florida. That's my main Twitter handle, or X, if you will, whatever you prefer to call it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're supposed to do that anymore. But if you're really interested, you can check me out at Locked On Seminoles. I'm sure Zach and I will have some fun with that between now and National Signing Days. Florida State and Auburn are actually battling for a couple of kids. We'll get into that more as we get down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In the meantime, check out everything I've got going on at auburndaily.com, and we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.